We wanted to make sure that we've fully introduced ourselves to all of you. Those of you in the nonprofit sector who've worked with us know us very well, but we have many others on this Zoom who we've never worked with before. We are a community foundation. We're a division of the New York Community Trust, a community foundation which is working across the 8 counties that include all of New York City, Westchester, and Long Island. And our work is to make a healthy and equitable and thriving community for all. Westchester Community Foundation addresses needs and issues in the community. We do this through a competitive grant program. That program is made possible because multiple donors have established permanent funds with us because they wanted to leave a philanthropic legacy. The Environmental Grants Program is one of those competitive programs. We have had donors with a vision and a passion for the environment who have left funds with us so that we can promote a more environmentally sustainable, resilient, and just Westchester. Our grants over the last decades to support nonprofit programs in the environment have included programs that mitigate climate change, that promote the preservation and conservation of shorelines, that have reduced stormwater runoff and protected drinking water, programs that have promoted conservation and open space, and programs that have preserved biological diversity through habitat conservation and protection. As many of you know, we took a pause on environmental grant making the first half of the year. Why did we do that? We felt that it was very important to pause and take full account of the moment that we are in, to learn from our colleagues in the environmental grant making field, and to reevaluate what opportunities we as a community foundation had to make an impact in the field. And as you know, there's a deeper understanding of climate change and the climate crisis, and an increased emphasis on climate mitigation and climate adaptation. We're also in a moment where there's a deepening recognition of the disparate impacts of climate change on vulnerable communities. In other words, environmental justice issues. And especially in New York State, we have emerging opportunities. We have robust state policy and more ambitious federal policy and climate goals. And we know that there are unprecedented levels of funding soon to be available both at state and local levels for climate mitigation and adaptation. Our vision of our updated environmental grant program is that Westchester will be more environmentally sustainable and resilient in the face of climate change because our communities are accelerating their work to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and to reduce their vulnerability to extreme weather. Our goal for living out that vision is to accelerate Westchester's local municipal capacity to identify mitigation opportunities and to assess their climate risks, and then to implement climate mitigation and adaptation policies and projects. Our strategy for reaching these goals is to provide grants, sort of 2 types of grants. Grants to help municipalities identify and competitively apply for state and federal funding, and grants to provide advocacy support to advance local climate solutions. Within this program, we anticipate making grants of $25,000 up to $100,000 for projects up to 18 months. Who can apply? And this is one of the changes in our portfolio. Obviously, those of you who are nonprofits will recognize this change. Municipality, for the work to strengthen municipal capacity to plan, execute, and or secure climate funding from these federal and state sources, applicants can be municipalities, they can be municipal units, they can be nonprofit organizations providing technical assistance to municipalities, and they can be academic institutions providing technical assistance to municipalities. We'll be watching closely and encouraging intermunicipal collaboration if the environmental challenge that's the subject of your proposal is shared across municipal borders. And who can apply for policy advocacy? The policy advocacy to advance local climate solutions, those grants can be made to nonprofit organizations that are leading in their communities to strengthen municipal climate work. The RFP is extremely detailed and it is available at our website, which is there on the slide, with a deadline of September 1st by the close of business, 5 p.m., submitted by email. We know we will take questions during this session, but we also will accept questions that can be emailed to this new email inbox, 2023 RFP at WCFNY.org. So that is the overview, and we now will use our time to take questions. Lauren has been monitoring and keeping track. So Lauren, I'll just turn it over to you to hand me the first question.
We actually don't have any questions in the chat. I'll give folks a moment. Okay, our first question. Tara, you mentioned WCT grant work, not only in Westchester, but in Long Island. Can a grant application now include both Westchester and Long Island?
That is a great question, and we will be focusing on Westchester. It is our partner, our other colleague within the New York Community Trust family, the Long Island Community Foundation, which makes grants to support environmental work on Long Island.
Thank you. Next question. How do you define policy change?
Well, there are many local policies which can be updated or revised that take into account the moment we're in with climate change. In other words, if your zoning policy or your land use policy has not been revised to take into account your own climate goals or the state of New York's very ambitious climate goals, those would be local policies. It could be your municipal waste policy. It could be your policy about how you heat your own municipal buildings. It could be land use policy regarding green infrastructure. It could be building codes that have to do with stormwater capture and green roofs. So there's a range of policy, and the list on the RFP is not extensive, but we're encouraging municipalities to think about their own unique situation with regard to the climate moment we are in, to think about where your local policies around streets, land use, your own buildings, your own use of energy can be reviewed and updated in light of where we are and where science is and what best practices are.
Great, thank you. Next question, how many total grants do you anticipate awarding?
Proposals will be reviewed and we will be looking for competitive proposals. As we said, the grant range is $25,000 to $100,000. So it's not clear to us how many competitive proposals we'll get and how many we will be able to make.
Great. Next question. Does a nonprofit have to partner with a municipality, or can it apply alone to do this work?
The purpose, well, because it depends on whether the nonprofit is intending to do advocacy, in which case they can, that organization can apply on its own. If the nonprofit is intending to provide technical assistance to a municipality, as noted in the RFP, we would expect that there's a clear memorandum of understanding and agreement between the municipality and the nonprofit that clearly spells out the work that the nonprofit will be doing alongside the municipality to provide technical assistance.
Great, thank you, Tara. At this point, there are no further questions in the chat. Oh, here's another one. Next question is, would technical assistance include preparing an RFP?
If what you need as a municipality is you need, for example, you need some engineering studies on why the streams that run through your school property are eroding. I'm just making this up, folks. So, but you don't have the first clue about what you need from an engineer, and you don't have municipal staff with those skills, and you have taken full advantage of all of the resources available through the county's Department of Planning. And for example, with water issues, the Department of State, New York Department of State, and looked through all those programs. If they do not provide you any guidance on writing an RFP, and you don't have staff with the capacity to write an RFP, then I would say you are welcome to submit a proposal. We know that there are a lot of steps that need to go into being competitive for example, the 2024 RFA from the state of New York for funding for large infrastructure or small infrastructure programs. And you may, as a small municipality, not have a large enough team to take those technical steps and get that technical information. So that's the purpose of this RFP, is to help municipalities get what they need, to know what they need, and know what the options are for addressing the adaptation or mitigation challenge, so that you as a municipality can submit a technically sound application for state or federal funding. And I'm just going to give you an example. And it was not a municipality, but we learned a lot from this. There is a nonprofit on the shore side, Long Island Sound side of the county, which does have a stream running through it. And the stream was eroded by the extreme weather events and the problems in the watershed. And the nonprofit wanted to address this. So they applied to the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation Futures Fund for the Long Island Sound. But because they had not yet had any engineering studies of why the stream bed was eroding, they were declined in that funding round, and they were provided guidance on, you need to get the following things. And it was a range of technical assistance that would really assess the property, the portion of the watershed they were in, what was happening on the stream bank, and provide them the advice on what would restore the health of that part of the brook running through their property. So that's the kind of technical, they didn't need assistance writing an RFP, but they needed assistance getting the engineering studies so that they had a clear project in mind. They knew the technical requirements to complete the project, and they could get a clear budget for the project. So we know those are the kind of steps that are often beyond the capacity of a municipal organization. You just don't have the large team that can do all that work. So I would say you're welcome to apply for support for creating an RFP. You'll just need to make a very strong case.
Great. Thank you, Tara. Next question. Do you have any expectations regarding the size or percentage of a match you are looking for from applicants?
That's a great question. And as you'll see in the RFP, if you're a municipality and you know that you need an engineer to advise you on best practices for some green infrastructure to address a flooding situation that you have in your community, we are not expecting a local dollar match. We know that your staff will be involved, but you do not have to count your staff time as part of a match. But as noted in the RFP, grants to municipalities will cover the cost of consultants, for example, engineering companies. They will not cover your staff time. And I would say to nonprofits, you know, especially if the project is a larger budget size than what we have laid out is within the budget range, then you would need to identify sources of funding that would make the total project budget work above and beyond what we said was the limit of the funding.
Excellent. Next question. If we have a current grant from the Westchester Community Foundation, can we apply to expand that project? Or do projects have to be new and unrelated to existing projects?
Projects submitted in response to this RFP must meet all the parameters of this RFP. I am not, so we are not renewing current grants. So if you are implementing a current grant from the Westchester Community Foundation and you believe the work that you're doing under that current grant meets this RFP, then you are welcome to apply under this RFP, but do not think of it as a renewal grant. Does that make sense? I mean, just respond to the RFP. Obviously, the context in this case to your new proposal would be the background work that you have done up to this point, which makes the RFP attractive to you. In other words, you think you're going to have something to continue. Then yes, I would encourage you to respond to this RFP, but do not think of it as a renewal grant.
Next question. For example, can the grant fund a municipal position who is educated as an arborist, for example, in order to enforce that municipality's tree ordinance?
No, we will not be providing grants for municipal staff positions.
Great. Somewhat of a related next question. What types of expenses are allowable in the proposed budget?
Sure. So obviously, we have two different grant tracks. So I'm going to talk about the technical assistance grants. And within that grant track, we have potential applicants being municipalities and potential applicants being nonprofits or academic institutions. So first, I'm just going to address municipalities. If you are submitting a proposal that requests technical assistance, the budget should include the costs of contracting with the technical assistance that you need. In other words, you need hydrology studies, for example. And so your budget request is the cost of that contractor's services. If you're a nonprofit providing technical assistance, I would anticipate that your budget is going to include your staff time and then non-personnel expenses up to and including perhaps you need to bring in some additional talent of a different kind of consultant. You have meeting expenses, you have convening expenses. I mean, I am anticipating many different types of proposals, so it's a little bit hard for me to project what you would have in your expense budget. I am happy to take questions as you move into preparing your proposal, if you're sort of stuck on creating a budget. But so academic institutions and nonprofits who are providing technical assistance would obviously have staff expenses in implementing the proposal.
Great. Next question is, do you expect that these grants will be renewable?
Because the grants to municipalities or the grants to enable a municipality are really focused on getting your municipality ready to submit a competitive grant application for state or federal funding, I am not anticipating technical assistance grant of that kind to a municipality needing to be renewed. You need engineering studies and advice on best management practices for whatever your issue is. The consultant will provide those to you, and or a consultant will help you apply for that money. Our grant support to you is therefore finished because you've gotten ready to be competitive for the larger grant dollars that are available through the state and the federal funds. If it's a nonprofit providing technical assistance and you think you have a case that you didn't finish the work in the 18 months, then that's a different conversation. We're going to learn from this new approach and these new projects that come to us from you all. So as you think about this proposal that you're preparing, just be focused on the objective that you want to achieve through this grant funding. That objective might be reached, and our funding will no longer be needed because you are now poised to access the larger funding that will help you actually implement a project.
Great, thank you. Tara, there's another question here about a viable program concept. So question is, would this be a viable proposal? Creating a design for a larger project of electrifying a municipal garage, which is currently a large source of greenhouse gas emissions, thereby creating a model for other communities to replicate.
That is a great question. I can't tell you off the top of my head without sort of knowing a little bit more about that concept. Feel free to email me. And I will absolutely get back to you.
Okay. Somewhat of a similar question is next. Our town is planning replacement of a 70-year-old highway office garage with a new modern energy efficient facility, potentially with solar power and geothermal heat. Our next step is planning, permitting, and detailing design of the garage. What portions of this process would WCF be able to fund?
Well, I want you to think about two things as I think about that important project. One is to think about first of all, have you taken advantage of all the technical assistance available from and through NYSERDA, Sustainable Westchester, et cetera, right? Because there may very well be resources that would walk you through at least part of what you have just described. Then you also need to think about then what you anticipate as your total cost and what can be done in 1 year. And then you need to think about our grant dollar range. So, using all of those lenses and taking those steps should lead you to a conclusion about what you might be able to apply for. And again, I'm happy to take that particular question through the RFP inbox.
Next question is, can the grant pay for a municipally owned and operated tree nursery to economically grow trees for street tree use?
So the foundation generally never provides line item costs in a municipal budget. Sometimes with projects that are large, what a municipality needs is the kind of technical assistance to help that municipality figure out through its own budgeting process and sort of the way it handles revenue, what might be some sources for funding to keep something like that sustainable. I'd be happy to talk about that particular need, sort of advice. And also be happy to brainstorm with whoever submitted that question on other potential resources in the community for getting that kind of work done without having to establish your own municipal tree nursery. There may be less, there very well may be options besides that to get the work done and get those trees into your community.
Thank you. Next question is there a start date for the project if awarded? The RFP advises grant awards will be announced around November 30th. Can work start right away?
Grants never pay for work that has already started. We don't sort of back pay. That's a silly phrase, but you know what I mean. We don't back fund work that has already started. You won't know until November 30th at the latest whether you have been awarded the grant. So, a reasonable start date would be mid-December to the beginning of the year.
Great. This is a follow-up question to an earlier one. To follow up on the hiring of a tree arborist, will the grant pay for an outside consultant rather than a municipal employee?
That sounds like a question that I should have with the municipality who's asking the question. Clearly, there's a really great interest in sort of more and healthy trees. And we know it's an important adaptation and mitigation tool. Sort of thinking, remember, these are 1 year technical assistance grants, or 1 to 18 months, 6 months to 18 months. Our ultimate goal here is to help you be ready to implement projects which you can sustain as a municipality. So grant funding for an outside arborist may or may not get you what you really need as a sustainable tree program in your system, in your municipality. So I'll be happy to take that question through the RFP inbox.
Next question is, are eligible municipalities able to apply for more than one grant award project if the total requested grant total is less than $100,000?
We always encourage you to prioritize your needs and submit one proposal. And let me just say, again, we want this grant program to be successful, and we want it to help you succeed. So if you really believe you have multiple technical assistance needs that need to be all done at once, and you believe you can make a strong case, you are welcome to submit that proposal. It will be reviewed, and this will be a competitive grant review process. So I advise you to think really carefully about the constellation of needs, about prioritizing those needs, and about knowing specifically what kind of technical assistance you need. I would advise against bundling all kinds of things, because you know you can get to a total of 100,000. That, you know, we're going to be looking for the substance of your request.
About 4 more questions in the queue here. They continue to come in, but 4 left. When is the next round of WCF environmental grant programs anticipated?
Yeah, we have not yet established that, but we absolutely anticipate making environmental grants in 2024, and that information will be available on our website towards the end of the year. And we know often with, particularly with state funding, you know, there's that sort of window of when you can respond to the state's RFAs. And sometimes our grant calendar may not exactly put you in a position to meet the next RFA windows. So keep an eye on our announcement and think about, you know, how you might sequence your work to be ready for the state RFAs, if that's what your plan is.
Just a couple more here. To follow up on the question on the Long Island Westchester joint grant, is the Long Island grant program due dates matched to Westchester?
If you are working in Long Island, right, if you have an environmental project in Long Island, I encourage you to go to the website of our Long Island Community Foundation, sort of sibling, so to speak. Take a look at what they fund and take a look at what they say on their website about the process. At this point, I do not anticipate that our grant program and their grant program will be matched up. And I'm a little, so if you're doing work that impacts both Long Island and Westchester, I am not quite sure that you can coordinate the requests at this point.
Tara, can I just add an addendum to that, just so folks understand? The Westchester Community, this is Laura Rossi, I'm the executive director. The Westchester Community Foundation manages our own grants portfolio. We work with the Long Island Community Foundation, which is also a division of the New York Community Trust, through the Long Island Sound Funders Collaborative, which is just a different entity. This is not for island municipalities to apply or for work that is you know, jointly for Westchester and Long Island municipalities. But if you feel you have a compelling case to make that fits within the eligibility requirements, send us an email at the 2023 RFP inbox. But again, our dollars are for Westchester. So this RFP is Westchester Community Foundation's RFP. It's not Long Island Community Foundation's RFP, and they run their own grants program. So I hope that clarifies.
Yeah, thank you, Laura, for that. That's helpful.
Great. We have 3 more questions, and we'll take those questions and then encourage, you know, folks, if you have any others that weren't answered during this session, to please email the inbox, and we'll put that again in the chat. Or if anything else comes up as you pursue the RFP, please let us know. The next question is, will the New York State environmental justice communities be prioritized?
Yes, you will see that in the RFP, we make it clear that we're very aware that there are what the New York State has defined as disadvantaged communities. And there's a hot link to that section of the state's website, and there's a link to the map. So if your work touches upon those impacts that have been disproportionately felt by what the state defines as disadvantaged communities, we are looking forward to seeing your proposal. Just do your research about whether or not your work is focusing on one of the communities that the state has lifted up as having borne disproportionate impacts of climate disaster is my current word, but you know what I mean, of environmental degradation, and make that clear in your proposal.
Next question is, would the installation of a geothermal system be an eligible use of grant funds, provided that the municipality has the matching funds?
Okay, so that will be a question in my mind of, has the municipality fully taken advantage of state dollars which are available to help municipalities meet the cost of greening your energy use? So that's the first question. Has the municipality drawn on the state funding that is available? And your best navigator on that question is going to be Sustainable Westchester, which has a robust technical assistance program on those issues.
Great. And before I read out the final question, just a note that we can post this presentation on the RFP website so that you can circulate it to your colleagues who may have missed the presentation live this afternoon. So the final question that we have, can the technical assistance grant be utilized to implement existing policy, for example, guidance and procedures, consulting services, or only future policy planning?
Could you read that again, Lauren?
Sure. Can the technical assistance grant be utilized to implement existing policy or only future policy planning?
If you have an existing policy, and you are trying to implement that, I mean, I think, again, this is a question. It's not really clear to me what the challenge is. I'd be happy to take that question through the RFP inbox. And we may just need to have a conversation so that I better understand the context of the question and what's contemplated in it.
That wraps up the questions that were submitted through the chat.
Great. So as Lauren said, if you have a question following this today's Zoom, or if you generate questions as you talk about this opportunity with your colleagues and your community, please send us those questions. We do anticipate being able to sort of put an frequently asked questions sheet up on the website or available through the website that captures today's questions, because there may be folks who missed today's seminar who would have the same questions, and we will do our very best to answer questions that you have. I would say that please don't make those questions, please don't send me those questions at the last minute as you're preparing your proposal, because there may not be enough time to give a thoughtful response. You don't want to sort of be there at the day before sending me questions about, does what you anticipate submitting meet the requirements, or is there a question that I haven't yet answered? So please don't wait until the last week. Please load your questions into that email box in the early part of this process, and please be assured we fully intend to make environmental grants in 2024. So September 1st is not your last opportunity. Not all ideas or proposals might be ready for, as we say, prime time by September 1st. You may need more time to kind of think through what your priorities are and prepare for a 2024 application. But we really look forward to seeing your proposals, to working with them. And we're very excited about what we think is possible to help you get ready to do the larger, bigger, and such critically important projects in your community as we meet this moment, which, you know, all you have to do is look outside and know how critical it is that we keep moving with full intention and sort of reasonable speed to meet the challenges in our communities, because the mitigation and adaptation work that you are doing now will make a difference, not just for the people who live within your boundaries, but for the state of New York and for everybody else who's depending on a healthier planet. So that's it from me. I certainly look forward to any future questions and appreciate your interest in our grant making program. Look forward to working with you.
Thanks for attending, everybody.